Thanks, everybody. That was fun. As Juliana mentioned, I'm David Bohnert, Beef Extension Specialist and Range Animal Scientist, Ruminant Nutritionist with Oregon State University. And what I'm going to try to talk to you today about is managing body condition score and how we can do that in order to benefit the cow as well as the calf, in addition to the importance of calving distribution, and talk about a few of the tools that we can use to shorten that calving distribution and decrease that calving period that we're all usually working with, starting sometime in February, running through April. What I'd like to start with is, this is just a typical BCS variability graph, if you want to think of it that way, of a cow production year for a spring calving herd in, let's say, the Intermountain West. On the vertical axis, we've got body condition score that you can see here, and then we've got month of the year on the horizontal axis. And as you can see, as you head into calving, your cows hopefully are maintaining or at a pretty good body condition score. They usually gain a little weight and body condition score going into breeding, falling off going into the weaning period, is usually forage quality is going to be dropping, and then usually improving body condition score heading into that winter feeding period. And if we really look at that, it matches really well with some of our forage quality that we have, especially here in this region. This is a forage quality curve and forage crude protein that was put together at our from research at our experimental range and surrounding areas. And the point I want to make there is if you look, the changes in body condition score follow real closely with what we see there with forage quality. And we've got a very narrow window, probably about 45 to 60 days of adequate forage quality, what I'll call adequate forage quality, that we can take advantage of during that calving to breeding period, which is a critical time, and is really important that those cows are in a good positive plane of nutrition at that point, so that they can rebreed and hopefully get back pregnant again, so that they can start the cycle over the following year. But one of the things that's really important is body condition score, and that is a tool that is really good for estimating the energy status of beef cows. And I think it's one of those things that a lot of people take for granted and don't use near as much as they should as an important component of their management system. And the reason that it's really useful for a lot of people from the standpoint of cattle management is it's easy. It's one of those things that most anybody can do. It's usually pretty consistent and it's rapid, and we can do it on a pretty much a herd basis, depending on how you do it and working it out within your own system. And the reason it's really important is cow body condition score has a direct correlation to how well that cow is going to perform reproductively, as well as the overall performance of your beef cattle herd. And body condition score is one of those tools that we've used for a long time, as I mentioned, in the nutritional management of gestating beef cows. And a point I would like to make is one of those things when we've been managing our late gestation or gestating beef cows, one of the things, the primary thing that we're really looking at, or that we've been interested in, is managing that cow so that she's in a good nutritional status, her energy status, her protein, everything is in minerals, all are meeting what we want her to. But that's mainly so that she can be in good condition, have a healthy calf, and then hopefully be in a good enough condition to rebreed. And the reason that's important, and I think that's evident here if we look at this graph, and basically we want our cows, when we enter that breeding season, to be somewhere between a body condition score 4 and 6. If they're not in that area, they're not going to want to rebreed very well and maintain that yearly calving interval. And therefore, the body condition score allows us to manage that cow in a way that if we know we need to improve our body condition score heading into the calving and breeding period, that we can strategically manage a group of cows in a way to get them in an area and get them in a body condition score that will allow us to hopefully rebreed and be useful in our herd. And that brings me to this point. As I said, normally we always worried about cow body condition and nutrition related to that cow, getting her to have a healthy calf on the ground, making sure her colostrum is good, and then also making sure that she's in good enough condition heading into that breeding season. But some recent research in the last 10, 15 years dealing with fetal programming or gestational nutrition, I know a lot of you have probably already heard about this or are familiar with it, but it's basically the concept that during gestation, there is some insult or stimulus that occurs. That can be nutritional, that can be environmental, that can be a health issue potentially, that can have long-term effects on not only the development of that fetus in utero, but then the lifetime of that calf or livestock or even humans. That what it can be is how that can affect the long-term productivity and health and well-being of that individual. And why is that important, and why are we talking about it related to beef cattle? If you look at the gestation of a beef calf, for instance, we know that if we break it down into trimesters, that last trimester is where a lion's share of the fetal growth is going to occur. Second trimester, there's still a pretty good amount of growth that occurs there as well. In the first trimester, not a lot of growth, but each of these is important, and various systems are being developed and growing at that time. Could be neurological systems, could be organs, could be muscle mass, could be fat tissue. Those are all very important things, and what occurs in each of those trimesters can be affected by that nutritional insult we talked about or stimulus, and then that has long-term effects on the ability of that offspring to be productive moving forward. So that opened me up into basically asking this question, and it relates to some research that we've done we'll talk about in a minute, and that's the annual variability in cow body condition score. This is that same graph that I showed you a little earlier, and if we look, we can see the cow body condition score kind of cycles, goes up and down. We will probably have range, you can have body condition score ranging depending on what production state they're in, between 4 and 6, pretty easy within a normal production year, especially here in the Intermountain West. And if we start with breeding, that first trimester, they're probably losing some body condition score. We head into weaning, and depending on your management scenario, if you turn back out, maybe they're going to maintain, may not grow a little bit. You bring them home, put them on rake bunch or meadow aftermath or alfalfa, corn stalks, whatever you may have in your region. They're probably going to maintain or gain a little weight in that second trimester, probably do the same in the third, as long as they're maintaining performance. If they're grazing on low quality dormant forage, you're probably going to need to provide some kind of supplement in order to get their body condition score back to where it needs to be heading into that calving season. So my question is that good or bad? A lot of times when you hear recommendations for managing your cow herd, they'll say that you need to maintain your cows at a 5 or 6. Well, the assumption that if you maintain them at a 5 or a 6 year round, that's really good. You're doing a good job, and that's the way you want to be. Well, we designed a study to actually look at this question, because one of my mentors a long time ago, Ed Houston with Texas A&M, actually used to tell me it was important for that cow to cycle. And he made a point of saying that needed to happen. And as long as they were heading into a good plan of nutrition, heading into that calving season, that things would be okay. So this is a little bit of a design that we looked at. Ronaldo Cook, Rodrigo Marquez, and I did a study looking at the timing of the increase in body condition score during gestation and what effect that might have on not only the cow, but on the calf primarily. And what we ended up doing was we AI'd our cows. And at the time of breeding, we also body condition scored those cows. And we had a number of cows that were in that right around body condition score 4 at that time. And what we ended up doing was leaving those cows, some of those cows that were body condition score 4, we held them at a 4 all the way through gestation to calving. We also had a few cows that were body condition score 6, and these were all bred to the same sire, AI sire, and confirmed pregnant with ultrasound. The body condition score 6 cows, we held at 6 all the way through gestation to calving. And then we had a staggered stair step with those other body condition score 4 cows. We had a group that went from body condition score 4 to 6 in the first trimester, then held at 6 through calving. We had another group that we held at 4 through the first trimester, then increased it to 4 to 6 in the second, and held them at 6 into calving. Then the body condition score 4 cows that we held through the first and second trimester, raised them to 6 in that third or the final trimester, and then held them into calving. And then after calving, they were managed as a single group up until weaning. And interestingly, what we saw was, we can go over here, calving. We really had no effect on calving percentage. There's some numerical numbers there, but they weren't statistically different. Calf body weight wasn't affected by treatment. Milk production wasn't affected by treatment. Weaning rate was not affected by any of our treatments. But when we looked at weaning body weight and weaning average daily gain, basically we see the same for both of those variables. And if we look at that, those that were body condition score 4 all the way through calving, body condition score 6 all the way through calving, and those that increased essentially in that first trimester, there was no difference in their weaning weight or weaning average daily gain. However, if we look at those cows that were in body condition score 4 to 6 in the second trimester, when they increased there or in the third, we were able to increase weaning weight. They were greater. And we also were able to increase weaning average daily gain. And if we look at that, basically those two treatments compared to the others, we had about a 30 to 40 pound increase in weaning weight, as well as almost a little bit, somewhere a little over 1/10 of a pound increase in average daily gain. So at least when we look at a calf performance heading into the weaning period, just by when we manipulated weight gain and body condition score gain of those cows during gestation, everything else being held the same, we were able to see a benefit in weaning weight from those calves when those cows were increased in body condition in the second or third trimester. So shift gears a little bit now and get into calving distribution and ask the question, why is it important? And it's kind of a no-brainer when a lot of people, when you think about it, because those cows that calve early in the calving season, they have a lot more time to recover, start cycling, and then be in a better condition to rebreed and hopefully become pregnant. Also, when we're looking at calving earlier, we know that a lot of data has shown that that improves reproduction and longevity, especially when we're looking at replacements. And this is some data that I pulled from a study by Cushman and et al. And others in 2013. It was about 2,200 commercial heifers that were used. And in these replacement heifers, they looked at the heifers that were born in the first, or that calved within the first 22 days of the calving period, compared with the heifers that calved later than that. Okay, and so greater than 23 days after the first set of those early calving heifers calved. And so in looking at that, we've got, this is the percent heifers remaining in the herd. And then they followed those heifers for 10 calving seasons that we can see here. And in looking at that, starting at the third calving season, those heifers, replacements that calved in the first 22 days of the calving period, there was a greater proportion of those that stayed in the herd all the way through to that 10th calving season. So demonstrating you spend all that time and effort into developing those replacement heifers, by selecting those that calve early in the calving season and retaining those, we know that those definitely, and same can be said about cows, those earlier calving cows, they're going to stay in the herd longer than later calving animals. Another byproduct of that is those calves that are born early also yield better performance and growth, as well as carcass traits. And this is an overview of 3 studies from the 1970s all the way through to the Cushman study, basically with the heifers that we just talked about earlier, where they also looked at steer calves. And they looked at the weaning differences per calf compared with calves that were born in the first 21 days or calving period, that second 21 days or second calving period, and the third 21 days or third calving period. And so in each of those studies, if you hold the weaning weight of those calves that were born in the first 21 days as a, let's call it a control or the standard that we're comparing to, those calves that were born in the second calving period were about on average 40 pounds lighter than the ones that were born in the first calving period. And similarly in the third, almost the same, about another, it was 80 pounds lighter than those born in the first calving period. So when you look at that, that's money in your pocket, really, especially if you're selling at weaning or selling on the video not long after weaning. That 40 or 80 pounds is a substantial amount of money that you're leaving on the table simply because of when those calves would have been born. Also wanted to take just a second and talk about how the shortened calving season, we know if we have calves that are born in a shorter period of time, let's say it's 60 days, we know that there's going to be a lot more consistency in those calves, and they're going to be more uniform, so that your marketing option and hopefully overall calf sales are going to be better than if we had a calving season that was over 90 days or even 120 days. You're going to be able to have animals, a greater amount of animals that are more consistent. So I threw this together fairly quick, just trying to show as an example, using the 40-pound difference that we just saw earlier. If we have an early calving period, a moderate calving period, or a long calving period, and I'm just doing 60, 90, or 120 days there, and let's just use 100 calves that we're looking at. If we have an average weaning weight of 550 pounds for that early calving and 510 for the moderate, 470 for the late, if we look at that, we're looking at about a range of about $12,000 in sales, gross sales we're looking at, and that's at $1.50 a pound. We all know what's happened recently with calf prices, and not too long ago that would have been $2 a pound. It would have been much more money. We'd have been approaching 18,000 instead of 12. So just showing the importance of maintaining a short calving distribution if possible, what that can affect on not only the performance and longevity of our animals and our replacements there, but also our economic impact that we have. So if calving distribution is important, what tools do we have available to us in order to shorten that calving distribution? And we do have a few that are available, and they pretty much all center around Estrus Synchronization and AI. That's a given that nutrition is going to be good. I'm assuming that nutrition is going to be maintained and everything else is there. But if we look at Estrus Synchronization and AI, there are some serious advantages that are there. We can definitely shorten the breeding season because we're synchronizing those cows. We're hopefully getting them all bred early in the season. We also have a decreased number of bulls that we need, because even if we just get half of our cows pregnant to AI, we're not going to need as many bulls as we would have if we did an AI. And probably one of the big issues, or not issues, but advantages that we get is that there's a more efficient strategic use of genetics to meet ranch management objectives. You can choose bulls to use in certain cows or certain cow groups, and hopefully meet those objectives that you need to get where you want the ranch to go. Now, they don't come without challenges, and AI does definitely bring, and synchronization do bring challenges. Greater planning and preparation. It's not something that you can just plan on doing tomorrow and go out and do it. You're going to need to plan in advance, and you're going to need to have not only the cattle handling and processing facilities, but you need the ability to handle those cattle in a way and through the facilities that you need to do. That also includes personnel. You're going to need to have people that are trained properly to get the AI done, to do the synchronization protocols, and also handle them in the right way. And then there's costs. It's not cheap, but you're also, remember, decreasing the amount of bulls you might need. So you got that cost that you can decrease, but then you've got the cost of drugs, semen, and the additional labor, because you are going to have to handle the cattle a few more times than you would have with natural service. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Estrus synchronization, because you can go online and find those just as I'm giving you an example right here. This is compiled by the Beef Reproductive Task Force. If you go to the website on the screen, it's iowabeefcenter.org/estrussync. There will be an Estrus synchronization planner that you can download for free. You just register and get it, and it'll go over all the Estrus synchronization protocols that are currently recommended, as well as those that are good for both heat detect AI and fixed time AI. and there's a tab there that you can go through and do it. And these are really good programs, and that'll work with you. You can work with your local stud service to help you with that, or extension agent, and work out a good way of coming up with a protocol that's going to work for your operation. This is just a screenshot that I took. It's an Excel-based planner. This is what you get when you download it, and one of the tabs is actually the synchronization protocols that I showed you. But the synchronization planner, you can go through there and look at all of those different synchronization schedules and protocols, figure out one that might work for you based on when you plug your numbers in, you plug your own costs, you plug date, start date, you'll be able to see what it's going to cost you. You can also then see a calendar that'll help you determine if it's going to work for your management and your labor. It's a really useful tool, provided free of charge by the Beef Reproductive Task Force, and it's housed at the Iowa Beef Center. So that's something that you really can look at and use to help your operation synchronize and get more cattle that are in sync, bred in a early in the season, in the breeding season, and then hopefully calve early in the calving season. So not all of us, just look at AI. And if I were to, well, this is actually what I'm going to talk about now, is something that we use at the experiment station here in Burns quite a bit. And that's incorporating natural service with timed AI. This is an example of one of the procedures, the protocols that we use. It's the 7-day co-sync with the seeder. And what we do is we run through that protocol. They get run through the chute essentially 3 times. And then we pull the seeder, give a prostaglandin shot, and basically we're going to time AI about 66 hours later. And looking at this, a few years ago, Ron Terrell out of Nevada and Tom Geary out of Montana and I sat down and wrote a protocol looking at ways that we could improve the number of animals that we get pregnant with protocols like this early in the season. And if you look at the scenario here, when this is about 12, basically when you do a timed AI at 66 hours with this protocol, you're catching animals that were in heat from 48 to 84 hours. And in that scenario, you're probably going to get somewhere around 70% of those animals that were in a fertile heat related to that timed AI period. So what could we do in relation to management with that? What we've done is, as soon as we pull that seeder and give the prostaglandin shot, we're turning bulls in. And we turn those bulls in until about hour 48 or about 12 hours before timed AI. Then we pull the bulls, leave them out until 12 hours after timed AI, then turn the bulls in again. Why do we do that? We're trying to catch some of those cows that are in heat early and cows that are in heat late, and that we wouldn't get normally with artificial insemination via timed AI. So what's the advantage there? We're getting about 20 to 30% more cows pregnant consistently when we do this. Now, granted, those on the front and back end are not artificially inseminated, they're not pregnant to artificial insemination, but we're still getting more calves born early. And just as an example, we did that with our cow herd this year, and out of 300 head, they calved out in 38 days this year, all but 4 head. And so that's just showing you an example of using something like this, incorporating natural service with timed AI is a good way to really shorten that calving distribution and hopefully generate money for you without a whole lot of extra labor. So what if you don't want an AI? You don't have the skill, you don't have the facilities, or you don't have the ability to do it in the location that you're at. This is one of those things that is really nice when you're just using natural service. And what it is just a one-shot prostaglandin and using your bulls. So basically, if we consider day 0, you turn your bulls in with your cows, and you allow them to breed your cows to day 5. And at day 5, you're going to get your cows in and give them all a prostaglandin shot. And when you do that, you're probably getting about 25% based on math of your cows bred to natural service during that 5-day period early. okay? But when you give that prostaglandin shot, what you're going to do is synchronize that remaining 75% of your herd. And you give that prostaglandin shot, you run the cows through the chute one time, give them one shot, and turn them back out with the bulls. And in 1 to 5 days, you should get, by day 10, you should get all your cows serviced. Now, and you just leave your bulls in and get that done. Now you need adequate bull power, okay? Because you're probably going to have quite a few cows in heat, you know, in that day 6, 7, 8 period. So you're going to need adequate bull power, and it's really important that your BSEs or your breeding soundness exams are done. You make sure your bulls are sound, make sure they have good semen quality, so that they're able to handle that influx of synchronized cows, starting especially around day 6. Just wanted to give some examples. Jack Whittier in 1991 did a study looking at that for the first 9 days. So basically doing this protocol, looking at the 9 days with the animals that were cycling prior to the protocol, they increased the number of cows showing estrus in that period by 109% compared to those that were not given the one-shot prostaglandin. The amount that became pregnant was increased by 132%. And the proportion of calves born early in the season was increased 10%. So beneficial to using that one shot. And then in a more, this is a more recent study by Larson and others in 2010. They did the same protocol, and they found that the proportion of cows calving in the first 21 days was increased 20% compared to natural service without the one shot prostaglandin. So definitely a tool that can be used to increase the number of animals that are synchronized, bred early in the season, and then consequently calving earlier in the season, decreasing your labor time during calving. Also then with all the other benefits that we talked about earlier with a shortened calving distribution. So in conclusion, cow body condition score can definitely be allowed to fluctuate within a production year. You can, but if you do that, definitely make sure that those cows are in a positive plane of nutrition and that body condition score is improving in the second and or third trimesters. There's enough data out there showing that we definitely improve calf weaning weight, as well as yearling, maintain a yearly calving interval by doing that. Second, we should always be trying to shorten our calving distribution. Okay, there's benefits on the front and back end of that. We definitely improve calf performance. We improve selection and longevity of replacements because we can then select the animals that are born early in the calving season to use as replacements, and then use those then to calve early to maintain. So it's definitely going to work. It'll also increase calf sales. So we're going to improve our marketing, improve the uniformity and the consistency of our calf crop, and be very beneficial how we market those calves. And then finally, there's a lot of people, surprisingly, they're afraid of estrus synchronization. It's one of those things that we need to definitely embrace more and use more in our operations. And in my opinion, it can be incorporated in any operation. You just need to sit down and figure out how you can make it work. And because it's really difficult for me not to try to comprehend a way that it's not economical, that you can really work into. You can do AI, heat detect, timed AI. You can do AI with natural service, or you can just do natural service with the one shot, for instance, or even any of those other protocols. But if you're synchronizing them that tight, you can do timed AI. That's a really good tool that can be moved forward. And with that, that's what I have, and I will turn it over to Dustin. I appreciate your time, and I will stop sharing my screen.